Welcome to the Gals Guide podcast. Join us on an adventure to get to know famous and infamous women from around the world. Each of our presenters has a pick. Is she ancient history? Is she breaking news? Is she safe for work? Well, that's up to each presenter. All we know is that...
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Welcome back. I'm Barb, and I'm joined by Riwu, Katie, and Bonnie, sharing our Canadian gal picks. Bonnie's kicked us off with Lucy Maud Montgomery, and Katie brought us up to speed on Viola Desmond. Before we dive back in, I want to get to know something random about our gal pals. So I would like to know, since we're in Canada month, have you visited Canada? Where have you gone? And if not, where would you like to go?
I have been to Canada a couple of times. Once when I was very young, and I do not remember where in Canada. It was a quick over the border.
I know, that's why
I think it was kind of a,
I'm looking on a
look,
map.
we did it. Right. We're in Canada.
Take a picture of the sign.
Right.
Now we'll go.
And then I went back as an adult and went to London, Canada.
Okay.
And it's such a cute little college town. It's delightful. I enjoyed it a lot. I think I went 2 different times. I would love to go back to Canada again and especially see like the Nova Scotia area.
Very
see the
nice.
beauty of everything.
Yeah.
Exactly. You've got a passport.
I do. Nothing's stopping me.
I was waiting for
Except
Barb
money.
to give me daggers.
I've given up on you.
I know. That's a good idea when it comes to the passport. Oh, passports. Bonnie, what about you? Have you been to the Canada?
I have been to Canada once.
Yeah.
To Niagara Falls.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I mean, you went on the good side.
Barely counts.
But you were on the Canada side of...
Stayed on the Canada
Mine's the
side.
That's
same.
the good side.
London, Canada is like 2 hours north of Detroit, right?
Right,
2 or
yeah.
3. So
Yeah.
I've not gotten deep into Canada.
There you go. There's still time.
Okay.
So I've been there.
Yeah.
We almost went with some of Trey's friends were staying for in Canada for, is it 3 months? No. It was more than a month.
Gotcha.
Part of his work contract is that he can do work from home for X number of weeks of the year.
So you can go to
So
Canada
they
then.
booked an Airbnb for like more than a month, and a bunch of all the friends came up there to visit. So we almost did that.
Right, yes.
We had to like cancel that. But I really want to go to Kelowna.
Where's that?
It's on the other side.
Okay, the Vancouver side? Seattle side?
And it's not, I'm trying to think. It's not British Columbia, I don't think. I think it's the next one over. But it's like near the border.
Yeah.
But it's in a weird region. I watch YouTubers that grow stuff in Kelowna. It's like kind of the same growing zone that we're in.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
But in Canada.
In Canada.
Yeah,
There's a dude, I forget his name. Some dude who grows like microgreens and sells them. But he like got started, he would like deliver them on a bike and stuff, and he's like taking over his like neighbor's yards. He's
to be able to grow more plants. Yeah.
Well, he's has an
That's
agreement
Josh's
with
next
them.
thing. Sure.
Just like colonize it. But
just throwing some
he
seeds
will
in the wind.
He'll pay for like their water and give them vegetables and stuff.
Yeah.
In exchange for growing in their
I
backyards
totally do
that they weren't
Yeah.
using.
Yeah.
Bringing back sharecropping.
Yeah.
Something. And then,
but like in a nicer
It's
way.
a community
In a
garden.
sweet way.
A
where
community
everyone benefits.
I guess as long as his neighbors aren't making him grow plants in their yard, then we're fine.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. And then
Excuse me, can you come weed?
Another family that's in Kelowna, which I thought was hilarious that they're in the same town.
Yeah,
I was
right?
like, how did that happen?
Canada's huge.
It's you can't eat the grass. It's this little nerdy family. They crack me up, but they started doing like homesteading, and the last like year or two they've switched to like flower farming because people pay more for like the flowers. So they still grow like food for them and they'll grow some stuff to go.
But to make money, it's the flower farm.
The flower.
Cool.
Oh.
Very cool.
But they talk about like their yard, like they don't get all that crazy snow or all that cold. Like
So
it's
that's
still
what I was-
Canada.
Yeah.
But where their property is, it's like in a valley.
Mm-hmm.
So protected a little
But
bit.
their ground is like sand.
Oh.
pretty much. And she said, like, they will irrigate and the water just runs straight through it. Like, it doesn't hold any water.
Right. Yeah, so it's continual
crazy.
water situation. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I was even wondering if it was swampy, too, because there can be that swamplands where everything is wet all the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Interesting. I went to also Niagara Falls, the Canada, the good side. I've been to the New York side with my kids, telling them how much better it is over there in Canada as we stare at it. And they're like, it looks great over there. We were there, and it was actually raining on us on the New York side, and it was sunny. We could see the sun hitting the flowers on the Canada side. I'm like, look at how much better it is over there.
Pretty.
Well, none of us have a passport, though. So, yeah, I went at a time when there wasn't passports, and that was very fun. I grew up in Michigan, so you could do the little kind of Detroit hop over and suddenly you're in Canada. Yeah. And I also kind of started realizing how much Canadian kind of like junk food sort of thing was like over in Michigan, which I just assumed it was just something normal. I'd be like, oh yeah, like Smarties candies and stuff like that. But I also have ancestry there, so if I went anywhere, it would be the Montreal kind of Ottawa side. So the story is that one side of my family, there was this whole American Revolution thing, and one of them decided, fuck nah, and went to Canada. And then they stayed not too far away from, like, the border, so that's kind of that Montreal, Ottawa. But there's, like, gravestone markers of them there. There are roads named after them up there. Oh. They were neighbors with the Chryslers.
Well, there you go.
Right? The Chrysler family, kind of like the car people started in that area. So it's like, I'd like to go to just kind of see the weird ones that rebelled.
Like to go.
Yeah, I'd like to go.
So what would be the first?
I need a passport. Do you think maybe I could just trade some chocolate or something at the border? No, they want a passport, like a real one, not a Gal's Guide passport.
I don't think that works.
I'll have to get on that.
All right.
Yeah, but that's where I'd like to at least go to kind of start, sort of thing. Is look, because I'm sure there's lots of other people from other families that ran away from the revolution and said, "Nah, I'm going to Canada."
Right.
I feel like it's still a valid option to run away from the United States into Canada. And just
I was really curious to say, can I come back? Like, I mean, like, we've done it before. Like, you know, can I just go back again?
I'm with you. I've done some of the same travels. So just the, the Niagara Falls side, a lot less commercialized.
Yeah.
The U.S. side. And then Hamilton, Toronto, which is kind of in that general area. But like you said, it's huge.
Yeah.
I've also been to Vancouver.
Yeah, that's my parents have been to Vancouver. Loved it. Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, it's really beautiful there. But there's a lot of land in between those two areas.
Right.
The Canadian Rockies, I would love to see. I would love to go to Banff, which is beautiful. I've seen pictures. So those are probably two places that we'd like to go. If I envision a nice trip out west, kind of northwest into Wyoming, and then going over in that area, I would love to do that.
It's really pretty.
Yeah, very, very pretty. So that's where I would be off to.
I like it.
You could go too.
I can't.
When you get your passport.
I have an inability to get passports.
I don't know what. Is the mental block
but it's there.
Okay.
Who do you have for us?
So, no, you don't get off that easy.
Damn it.
So we will set a goal.
Yes, to work through my trauma of passport.
And we don't even have to do it in 2024, but in 2025, we are going to make this happen.
Okay. Sweet.
So I will give you,
there you go.
Until the start.
Everyone posted in the comments reminding Rude to get her passport.
To get into therapy to figure out what the hell is wrong with international travel.
You guys are so sweet, because now I'm just envisioning stealing you from your house with a blindfold, and we throw you in the backseat of the car, and we drive you to the post office, under duress.
The photos
march
would
you
be
in,
incredible.
So I might not steal her in the middle of the night, because I want your hair to look nice.
The post office isn't open.
I want your hair to look nice.
Sure,
so
sure.
I'll give you
this looks like crap midday too, though.
No, it looks beautiful today. Before you had the headphones on. But I will tell you. We'll make some plans.
Yes.
And I'll say have something nice.
We're gonna
on.
have
a
surprise party.
Exactly.
We're gonna go to Walgreens and the post office for no real reason.
Right.
We just need to stop by real quick.
Just got to make a pit stop.
Yeah, it's weird. No, I appreciate your support and your sponsorship for this poor child that can't figure out how passports work.
All right.
But who do you have for us?
I have Mary Ann Shadd Cary.
Nice.
A 4-name lady, so you know that Bonnie's
know.
all
Bonnie,
about
I
this.
was about to do her, and then Barb chimed up she wanted to do her. Because I was like, does she count or not?
Right,
Right.
She's a super awesome lady, but I was like...
She is a super awesome lady, and when I kind of dug into it, I'm like, well, she wasn't born in Canada.
That's fine.
But Canada does claim her, and her legacy is still there after she spent some time there. So we'll jump in. She was actually born in Wilmington, Delaware, on October 9th, 1823, and she was the eldest of 13 children.
13!
So, again, another big family.
Wow.
She was born to Abraham Doris Shadd.
Okay.
That's a mouthful, so he went by his initials, A.D.
Nice. Right.
A.D. Shadd and Henrietta Burton Parnell. A.D. and Henrietta were free African Americans living and working in Delaware.
Nice.
He worked as a shoemaker, and he established shops in Wilmington, Delaware, where Mary Ann was born, and in Westchester, Pennsylvania, when they moved into that area. Due to their history as free Americans, they were very civic-minded and active in the history of free Americans and concentrated on people of color and things like that. They were very active in the Underground Railroad and other civil rights activities, such as the American Anti-Slavery Society. He kind of elevated his participation. In 1833, he became the president of the National Convention for the Improvement of Free People of Color in Philadelphia. So taking leadership positions and that kind of thing. Growing up, Mary Ann's home frequently served as a refuge for fugitive slaves as part of the Underground Railroad. However, when it became illegal to educate African American children in the state of Delaware, the Shadd family moved to Pennsylvania because there it wasn't illegal. That's where Mary and her siblings attended school at a Quaker boarding school. And it was there that she was educated, and she herself became a teacher.
Nice. In
1840, Mary Ann established a school for Black children, so kind of perpetuating that education and lifting people up, as it were. In 1850, there was the passage in the U.S. of the Fugitive Slave Act.
Yeah.
So that put some restrictions on and penalties on the freed slaves, as well as anyone who assisted them.
Yeah.
So now A.D. Shadd had to look at that and say, we're ready to move. So he once again moved his family. This time it was into an area called United Canadas, so Canada West, if you will, settling in North Buxton, Ontario. He again stayed very civic-minded in his duties. In 1858, he became one of the first Black men to be elected to political office in Canada when he was elected to the position of counselor of their local township there in Ontario.
Gotcha.
So Mary Ann had a great role model within her own family, within her very immediate family, regarding community involvement, civic action, civic duty, responsibility.
Yeah.
So it was only a matter of time before that was going to come out in her. In 1848, after years of this exposure, Mary Ann stepped into the role of social activism. She wrote to a gentleman that you might have heard of before, a gentleman by the name of Frederick Douglass.
I was wondering if it would be him.
Yeah,
Nice.
So he was a freed slave who was also an abolitionist, social reformer, and an author. And at the time, he was working as editor for the North Star newspaper.
Gotcha.
So she wrote into the paper to express frustration, and she said, we should do more and talk less. I'm like, well, that's a motto I can live by, right? But she was tired of listening to speeches and even seeing her dad's involvement to attend all these conventions and talk a good game, but they had very little tangible improvements for the Black community. So she was tired of that.
Yeah.
Douglass was so taken with her ideas that he decided to publish her letter in the paper. And this was kind of the kickstart, if you will, of her life as an abolitionist fighting segregation, working as part of the anti-slavery movement.
Nice.
In 1850, also she became more involved when the fugitive slave law in the U.S. threatened to almost capture and return free northern blacks and escaped slaves back into bondage.
Right.
She decided that she and her brother together decided that they would move to Windsor, Ontario. That was right across from Detroit.
Yeah.
And this is where she, when she said, we need to do more, this is where she started doing more. This is the area that she wanted to settle into.
Sweet.
So Canada was making progress, but at the time of her settlement into Ontario, public education for blacks was not available there either. So she took it upon herself to start an integrated school for children and adults.
Nice.
She even offered evening classes for adults who were working.
Yep.
And that was kind of part of one of her cornerstones, if you will. She really taught and spoke about self-reliance. She wanted them to feel strong, feel empowered, to be resilient, even in everything that they were facing. She hated the way that the blacks were portrayed in the media as helpless and distraught and all of this kind of thing. So she wanted them to portray themselves as strong, as determined, and as capable. So that kind of became the cornerstone of her teachings.
Nice.
She stepped into some writing. In 1852, Mary Ann wrote a pamphlet, which I guess kind of was a thing back then.
Oh, yeah.
Highlighting,
little mini book.
Right, a little mini book, yes. Highlighting the moral, social, and political needs kind of in support of immigration.
Nice.
In 1853, she founded the Provincial Freeman. So it was the first newspaper published by an African-American female, and it was Canada's first by a woman of any ethnicity.
Ooh.
So she was kind of blazing trails on two sides of that coin.
I wonder if she was also around that same time as Victoria Woodhull with her paper.
So this was 1852.
It's a little bit before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Woodhull got her paper shortly before running, and she was
for office, right?
1872.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Gotcha. There you go. So
A little after. Yep.
Probably an inspiration to
Could have
Victoria
been.
Woodhull.
Could very
then.
well have been.
Nice.
Yep. So the paper's motto was devoted to anti-slavery, temperance, and general literature.
There you go. I like that mix.
Right. It was an interesting mix. The
Yep.
first issue of this weekly newspaper was published in Toronto on March 24th of 1853. So the newspaper, don't think of it like as the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. I mean, they're smaller. They're like 4 pages. But the newspaper at this time was kind of the center of information.
Yeah.
Both for their society and culturally. So it was kind of a big thing for her.
It was like a TikTok.
Yeah.
It was
of the
like
day.
the internet
my.
on
It was
paper.
like
It
the
was-
internet. It was like a daily internet blog post, if you will,
There you go.
of what is happening on
There
this
you
particular
go.
day.
I like it. So
It was
they're
super important, but at the same time, you're like, it's a newspaper.
Right.
No, it was a newspaper.
It was a big thing.
Yeah,
It was a big
yeah.
thing. And Mary Ann was involved in all aspects of the paper, and she wrote articles, and she was involved in the editing. And she worked very closely with her brother, Isaac, who ran the daily operations. He was also an abolitionist. But, I mean, coming from that family, how could you not be
Yeah,
at
they
that
were
point?
plugged in, yeah.
Exactly. But she realized that there were limitations of what a woman leader could do at that time in Canada, from a societal, from a gender perspective, and from a racial perspective.
She was at it at all sides.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. So she recruited and sought assistance from local businessmen and publishers in that area. And their names are the ones that appeared on the paper's masthead.
Yeah.
So she did not put her name on it at first.
Gotcha.
Soon after, as they launched the paper, she kind of did become the face of the paper. So she was traveling through Canada. Again, not like the internet. It wasn't like an online rag. So she actually had to,
Slap the paper
deliver
around.
it. Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And she tried to increase the subscriptions. But also during that time, she was trying to increase just the general awareness, sharing funding requests, not only for the paper, but also for the slaves, and kind of telling everyone about their plight and how
How they could help.
how they could help, and and what those people were going through.
Yeah.
And she did this kind of realizing that she could be putting her own safety
Yeah.
on the line because she was, single at the time. She was Black and she was young, and she was out there, kind of traveling on her own. So she could face terrible racism, which she did.
Yeah.
But she wanted to continue that family legacy and to elevate the voices of the Blacks and the abolitionists in North America, and especially in Canada. And she wanted to use that newspaper for good. I mean, that was kind of her, and in fact, the newspapers at that time, especially African-American focused newspapers from that 1850 to 1860, they were significant in the abolitionist efforts.
Yeah.
So she felt successful in uplifting voices in a meaningful and powerful way through her newspaper.
Yeah, it was very much a lifeline.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. So, when she was doing all this work and she was looking at that front page, like, why is my name not on that front page?
Exactly.
So a year
a
later,
little bit of fear.
a year
Get
later,
it.
she decided to change the masthead to feature her own name
Sweet.
rather than the men that she had hired to help. She also hired her sister to help with editing the paper, who got credit as well.
Nice.
And just those minor changes, she faced intense criticism for those changes, and also for some of the writings and how advanced and liberal her writings were seen.
Right. She was speaking with her own voice, using her own name. Oh, how did
we don't like it when women speak.
Right.
Exactly.
This is a whole different ball game.
It's Danger Will Robinson time.
Yeah, exactly. Emotional. She was very emotional. She was very emotional, I'm sure.
Right.
So, yeah. So,
Right.
so she did resign from the paper only 2 years after she started it, and it would continue.
Yeah.
But she decided to kind of step away, let it run, let her brother Isaac run it, and she would focus on some other things. And she did. After leaving the paper, she was still traveling through the U.S. and through Canada as a social advocate for Blacks, pushing communities toward full racial integration. She attended in 1855. She came into the U.S. and attended the Philadelphia Colored Convention. This also caused quite a stir.
Gotcha.
Because women did not attend this convention.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm like, was she allowed?
Yeah, so
As a woman?
You don't care if she's loud.
Exactly.
So the assembly voted,
Yeah.
and they allowed her to attend. They also allocated time for her to speak.
Oh, okay.
So she did speak.
Sweet.
Her message was very well received. Unfortunately, however, I'm not sure how this even happened. The minutes of the event conveniently left out her participation and her contributions.
Oh.
So surprise, surprise.
Right. So only the people in the room.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. But luckily, there were some folks who continued sharing her message.
Yeah.
But yes, it was not in the official record.
Right.
There was also an organization at the time that was called the Chatham
Right.
Vigilance Committee.
Okay.
Had you guys heard of this? I had not.
I know Chatham
heard of-
County, but in Georgia.
Okay, yes,
I don't know if
yes.
it's the same.
So this was
Yeah.
a group of Black abolitionists
Okay.
who formed to save Black people from being sold into slavery or sold back into slavery.
That would make sense, yeah.
So, and at the time that she was involved, there were some violent confrontations
Yeah.
where Black people would take up arms and go into locations where it had been rumored that Blacks were being held or restrained by whites.
Right.
And I own this person, or I'm taking this person to work on my farm. And so there were some violent confrontations there, but she was very involved in that organization.
Gotcha.
So again, speaking out for Blacks, speaking out against slavery, and trying to set them up for freedoms.
Right. In action and in support. And
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was going to say she put her money where her mouth was
She
with
did.
we can't just talk about it. We got to do something about
Right.
it.
She's in it. Yeah.
Right.
I like it.
Right. That's what started it all, and she certainly did live up to that. In 1856, she married Thomas F. Cary. He was a Toronto barber who she had met through involvement in the paper, the Provincial Freeman. They had a daughter and a son together. Unfortunately, he died a short time later, and there was no really information about how he died or what he died of, but he died in 1860. and she and the kids returned to the U.S., kind of settling in the Washington, D.C. in Maryland area.
Gotcha.
She continued to teach here. But she also, which I found was interesting, here's her little tie into Indiana.
Yeah.
She had a friend who was in Indiana and wanted her to come and help recruitment for the Union Army in northern Indiana. So she came over and helped with recruitment. And she became, at the age of 60, she became the second Black woman in the U.S. to graduate with a law degree from Howard University School of Law.
Oh, yay!
She continued working in newspaper industry, writing for the National Era and the People's Advocate. Mm-hmm. She was a founder of the Colored Women's Progressive Franchise Association. And then she started branching out, different than, support of, or anti-slavery and support of Black freedoms. She worked alongside a couple of ladies you might have heard of. Susan B. Anthony.
Susan B.
Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Mm-hmm. So she became very involved in the suffrage movement as well and was the first African-American woman to vote in a U.S. national election.
Yay!
So, yeah, she branched out a little bit there toward the end. She died at the age of 70 in Washington, D.C. From stomach cancer, unfortunately.
Still a very long life.
It's 70
at 70
good.
For,
Yes.
for all the... For everything she had been through.
Yes.
For all the good trouble she made.
Good trouble,
Yep,
all the danger
absolutely.
she was in,
Absolutely. One thing interesting about, she was interred at the Columbian Harmony Cemetery, which was in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
Again, that was in 1893. In the late 1950s, I didn't even know this was a thing, the approximately 37,000 people that were interred there were then moved to the National Harmony Memorial Park in Landover, Maryland.
Oh.
So her body was actually moved. And now she...
It might be just on the other hill.
Well, it's very close.
But
I mean,
it's sometime
it is.
another state.
It did become another state. So that was very...
It is always weird when
peculiar.
they move the deceased.
I thought that was a little weird.
I mean, I hope it wasn't for a freeway.
Right.
But it could have been for
some
a freeway.
Monument to some old white dude.
Hopefully not.
And so her family also was very successful. She had a brother who was a member of the Mississippi legislature between 1871 and 1874. A brother who graduated Harvard Law School and became a prominent attorney. One of her sisters was on staff at Howard University, so she was one of the first women appointed to the faculty at Howard University.
Sweet.
So very successful. Of the 13, there were some of their accomplishments.
Yeah.
But as you can see, I mean, AD really set up his family for that community involvement, for that civic-minded responsibilities. She and her siblings spent their lives pushing those boundaries, especially limitations normally placed upon them for their race. Mm-hmm. And then she and her sisters, of course, stepped into those roles and pushed on those boundaries and limitations that were placed on them as women, women of color. So they blazed not only a trail for Black people and supported Black efforts, but also for generations of women to come. So yeah, she was very very good, and that's why Canada adopted her, even though she only lived there for 10 years. They did fall in love with her.
Right.
So in Canada, she was designated a person of national historic significance.
Sweet.
With a plaque in Chatham, Ontario. There's also a plaque in Toronto that marks where she published the Provincial Freeman newspaper while she lived in that city. There's a Mary Shadd public school that was opened in Ontario, Canada. Their school motto, "Free to be the best of me."
Aww.
And a line in the school anthem that says, "We're on the right track, Mary Shadd." So obviously those were tributes to her as well.
That's cute.
There's a post office named for her in Wilmington, Delaware.
Okay.
And she's also been on a stamp in Canada.
Yay!
So she's got that going on for her. Her Washington, D.C. home, it's like a brick row home. That became a National Historic Landmark.
Oh, sweet. Bonnie's nodding like she's been there. Have you been there?
It was closed when we went there when things were just starting to open up for COVID.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
For the Her Flag. So a lot of stuff was closed. I think it was under construction.
Gotcha.
Or something with that one. And
you were in the area then.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Neat.
Very cool. In 1998, she was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame here in the U.S. So those were some of the tributes to her. Just shortly before her 200th birthday, the University of Windsor in Ontario, Canada, unveiled a statue for her.
Oh, yay.
And it was created by a local female artist by name of Donna Main. And members of the Shadd family and her descendants attended the unveiling. And then, like I said before, you kind of know you've reached it when you have a Google Doodle.
Oh,
so she
yeah.
also
There
has
you
had
go.
a Google Doodle.
Sweet.
And that was on her birthday for her in 2020. So October 9th, 2020. So
Cute.
yeah. So she was definitely a trailblazer. And again, as a young woman of color, traveling alone in the U.S. and Canada to help further the efforts of, people of color.
And using her voice and allowing for, more voices and publishing as well.
Yes.
So, yes.
So I loved listening to her. And I did think even, when I was writing down about her legacy and the tie-in to Washington, D.C., I'm like, I'd love to.
Go visit.
Definitely love to see that. So
yeah, sweet.
Yeah.
Little women's history
Exactly.
tour-ness.
Yeah, you don't even need a passport for that. So
I
we could actually go there.
I've done some of the women's history tours in DC, so I do love them.
I need to go back and do that. Yes,
they're quite fun. I dig it. Sweet. Did anybody have any questions? I say that like it's, all right, it's question time, everybody.
Question time.
Like it's a quiz.
What was her star sign?
Right, exactly. What was her favorite vegetable? Or what is it? Or what is her third favorite dinosaur?
Yes.
Okay. I did not find any of that information in my research.
Very
Well, I can tell you
weird.
she's probably a Libra.
There you go.
That October birthday.
Okay, is that what
yes,
it is?
Fellow
there
Libra.
you go.
We're very
Yep.
charming and charismatic.
Mm-hmm.
I can
Very
see
good.
why lots
So
of people
there
want to
you
work with
go.
her.
And
There
that
you
law and
go.
order, that things are,
Right.
hold on. It needs to, the scales need to be balanced.
We believe in justice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We can do
Mhm.
it ourselves in a bloody, violent way. We will.
Right, exactly.
I love that
Take
part of the
action.
story that
Yeah.
said, she wasn't shy.
Uh-huh.
If she needed to pick up a baseball bat, she'd pick up a baseball bat.
Exactly.
There you go.
I mean, she was close to Detroit at one point.
Right.
I mean, like, gotta do what you gotta do.
That's exactly true.
Did you want to wrap it
I
up?
can definitely wrap us up.
Sweet.
That wraps it up for this week. Join us next week as another Canadian gal is picked to share as Gal's Guide podcast continues. Thanks for listening.
Want to learn about more women of history? Gal's Guide opened a unique women's history lending library. Come visit and explore our collection. Learn more at galsguide.org. Thanks for listening.